Okay, let's unpack this. The sheer amount of digital information we're generating is, well, frankly staggering.
It really is.
You might have heard predictions maybe back in 2018. They said by 2020 we'd be swimming in like 644 zettabytes of data.
Uh-huh. And the reality was a bit lower, wasn't it? More like 200-something zettabytes.
Yeah, just over 200, but still.
Yeah.
Compare that to 2015, we only had 6 zettabytes then. It's an explosion.
Absolutely. And those 2018 forecasts, they were still looking at, what, 2,537 zettabytes by 2030?
And almost 20,000.
Yeah.
Well, 19,267 zettabytes by 2035. Just wild numbers.
And it helps to, try and get a handle on what a zettabyte is. It's a billion terabytes.
Right. And a terabyte, maybe how at home, holds about 1 million books, give or take?
Exactly. So if we're talking 200 zettabytes created just in the last decade, that's like 200 quintillion books.
Quintillion. It's hard to even visualize.
It really puts the scale of our digital footprint into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. And okay, try this visualization. Take those 200 zettabytes, put them on standard 1 terabyte hard drives, and stack them up.
How high would that go?
The tower would reach 3.16 billion miles. Yeah. Billion with a B.
Wow.
That's like 13,000 times the distance to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is all this data, if you break it down?
Mostly video, by far. Something like 70, maybe 80% of internet traffic is just video, streaming, social media clips, all that stuff.
It all adds up quickly.
Totally. Then you've got photos, text, emails, business records.
And scientific data, like from Particle Accelerator.
Yeah, that's in there too. But interestingly, even though something like the Large Hadron Collider pumps out, 200 petabytes a year when it's running?
Which is a huge amount on its own.
Right. But science data overall is still only maybe 1% of the global total. It's swamped by everything else.
So here's the kicker. This exponential growth.
Yeah, get this.
Yeah.
Maybe 90% of all the data ever created was generated in just the last 2 years.
90%. That's staggering.
And they predict the next 2 years will create more data than all of human history combined before that point.
And things like generative AI are just pouring gasoline on that fire, presumably.
Exactly. So you have to ask, is this sustainable? How long can we keep finding places to store all this stuff?
It raises that big question, right? If we're heading towards potentially 20,000 zettabytes by 2035, and right now we rely on maybe 12,000 data centers worldwide for our current 200 zettabytes.
It's math.
Would we need to, carpet the entire planet in data centers? It seems impractical, to say the least.
Well, okay, but technology improves, right? Human ingenuity and all that.
Sure.
Think about storage itself. We went from floppy disks, 1.44 megabytes, remember those?
Oh, I remember. Painfully.
To now, you can buy a 30 terabyte hard drive. That's an unbelievable leap.
It is an incredible leap. But, even with that progress, there are actual hard limits based on physics.
Like a fundamental wall we can't pass.
Sort of. There's something called the Bekenstein bound. It's basically the absolute maximum amount of information you can theoretically store in a finite region of space.
Yeah.
Per cubic centimeter, it's a ridiculously huge number. Like 10 to the power of 66 bits or something. Astronomical!
So are we, anywhere near hitting that universal speed limit for data?
Oh, not even close. Not remotely. The Bekenstein bound is so far beyond our current tech, it's not something engineers are worried about day to day.
Okay, phew.
The real challenges we face are what you might call soft caps, more immediate hurdles.
Soft caps. Okay, tell me more about those. What are we hitting up against now?
Well, think of them as engineering limits within a specific technology. For example, the hard drive guys, they ran into the superparamagnetic limit.
Superpara what now?
Interparamagnetic limit. Basically, as they made the tiny magnetic bits on the disk smaller and smaller to store more data, they got so small that just random heat energy thermal fluctuations could flip their magnetic direction, which, corrupts the data.
Okay, that sounds bad.
It was. But they found a clever way around it around 2005. Perpendicular magnetic recording. They just changed the orientation of the magnetic bits, stood them up vertically instead of laying them flat.
Clever workaround. Bought them more time, more density.
Exactly. And we saw a similar thing with flash memory, the stuff in SSDs and phones.
Right.
As they shrunk the transistors, the memory cells, down, they hit a wall around 20 nanometers or so. The cells were so close together, they started interfering with each other electrically. Errors cropped up.
So another soft cap. What was the fix there?
3D NAND flash. Instead of just shrinking sideways, they started stacking the layers of transistors vertically.
Going upwards,
Yeah.
like building skyscrapers for data.
Precisely. It dramatically increased the storage capacity in the same footprint.
So it seems like we keep hitting these walls, these soft caps, but so far we've found ways to innovate past them.
We have, yes. But the trend is we seem to be hitting them more frequently as we push things further, and there's just no guarantee we'll always find a clever workaround. And then there's this whole other issue, data permanence. How long does this stuff actually last?
That's a good point. We think of digital as forever, but it isn't, is it?
Not with current tech, no. Your SSD. The data might start degrading after about 10 years as the electrical charge fades.
Only 10 years, wow.
Magnetic hard drives, maybe tape backups, they might last longer, perhaps 10 to 30 years if you store them perfectly.
Better, but still not ancient history.
Right. There's some specialized optical storage, like MDIC, that claims maybe a century, but nothing is truly permanent.
And we don't know if there are density limits tied to longevity, maybe?
That's also possible. There could be trade-offs we haven't fully explored.
Okay, so massive data growth, storage methods that have limits in capacity and lifespan, sounds like a brewing problem.
Yeah.
But you hinted earlier there might be a perfect storage medium, one that already exists.
Well, perfect might be strong, but theoretically incredible, yes. And it's DNA.
DNA, like the stuff in me, in all living things.
Exactly that. Deoxyribonucleic acid. It sounds like sci-fi, I know, but DNA has the potential to store trillions of times more data per square inch than our best hard drives.
Trillions.
Trillions. And it can hold that data stable for thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years. It's nature's own high-density, long-term storage.
Wow. Okay, DNA is a data bank.
Mm-hmm.
How did that even work?
Well, think about what DNA already does. It holds the complete blueprint for building you. Every single instruction, down to how proteins should fold.
It's like the ultimate code.
It really is. It's like assembly language for biology. It tells your body how to grow, how to heal, everything.
And that information gets read out by mRNA, right? Messenger RNA.
Precisely. DNA holds the master copy. mRNA takes the specific instructions needed at the moment to the protein-building factories in the cell.
Okay, so the storage capacity must be huge.
It's mind-boggling. Nearly every cell in your body has a full copy of your genome. That's about 3 gigabytes of data per cell.
3 gigs per cell.
Yep. And you have, what, 30 trillion cells, give or take? So just doing the math. The average adult is walking around carrying about 90 zettabytes of data encoded in their DNA.
Wait, 90 zettabytes inside me?
Yeah.
That's almost half the world's current digital data.
Pretty much. Theoretically, if you could somehow subtract the data that makes you you, all of humanity's current digital information could probably fit inside the DNA of just 2 people.
That is absolutely insane. Okay, but our computers use zeros and ones, binary. DNA uses letters, A, C, G, T.
Right. Digital is binary 2 states. DNA uses a quaternary system for nucleotide bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, thymine, A, C, G, and T.
So how do you translate between them, binary to quaternary?
It's actually pretty straightforward conceptually. You just need a simple code, a schema. For example, you could say 0, 0 equals A, 0, 1 equals C, 10 equals G, and 11 equals T.
Ah, okay. 2 bits of binary give you 1 DNA base.
Exactly. So you can theoretically convert digital data into a DNA sequence almost instantly and back again. Think of binary like an on-off switch. DNA is more like a 4-position switch.
Okay, the translation makes sense. But how do you physically write data onto a DNA strand? Do we need, like, tiny little biological typewriters?
Sort of. We use machines called DNA synthesizers, or sometimes DNA printers. They've actually been around since the 80s, used in biotech labs.
Okay.
They work by building DNA strands artificially, adding 1 nucleotide base, A, C, G, or T at a time, in the exact sequence you want. It's a bit like an inkjet printer laying down dots of color, but with chemicals.
So I could theoretically take my photo library, convert it to ACGT code, and have one of these machines printed out as actual DNA.
In principle, yes. You could encode your entire hard drive back up onto strands of synthetic DNA.
And how long would that last?
If you store it properly, maybe dehydrated, mixed with salt, protected from enzymes, potentially thousands of years, no electricity needed, no magnetic fields to worry about.
That's the real game changer. Has anyone actually done this on a significant scale? Stored real data this way?
Oh, yes. There have been some key proof-of-concept demonstrations. Back in 2012, a Harvard team encoded a whole book into DNA. They broke it into about 55,000 short DNA pieces and successfully read it all back perfectly.
Wow, a whole book.
And then in 2019, a startup called Catalog managed to store all of English Wikipedia, the text part, about 16 gigabytes into a single vial of DNA.
16 gigs in one vial. How fast could they write it?
They were using their own faster proprietary printer technology. They reported speeds around 4 megabits per second, which was a big step up at the time.
Okay, so the tech exists, it works.
Yeah.
What's the catch? Why aren't we all backing up our photos to DNA files yet?
Yeah, there's a big catch right now. Cost. Synthesizing DNA, writing the data is still very expensive.
How expensive are we talking?
Current estimates are somewhere between, say, $1,000 and $4,000 per megabyte.
Per megabyte. Ouch!
Yeah. So, you know that 100 gigabyte 4K video you shot on vacation? Storing that in DNA today could cost you minimum, maybe $100 million, possibly much more.
Okay, yeah. That's not practical for home use just yet. It puts my cloud subscription in perspective.
Definitely. Cost is the major roadblock right now.
But is there hope? Will those costs come down?
There's a lot of optimism, actually. The cost of DNA synthesis and sequencing, too, has been dropping dramatically for years. Think Moore's Law, but potentially even faster for genomics tech.
Why is it dropping so fast?
Well, there's increasing competition, new technologies are constantly being developed, but also DNA synthesis is critical for things way beyond data storage. Think pharmaceuticals, vaccine development, pathogen research.
So there's huge investment from other fields driving the tech forward.
Exactly. That pushes innovation and brings down costs for everyone. And we're seeing speed improvements too.
Like the Wikipedia example.
Even more recently, just last year, a team in China developed a technique using pre-made DNA templates and doing lots of writing in parallel. They claimed it boosted the writing speed by about 350 times.
350 times faster. That's significant.
It is. They showed it off by storing and retrieving an image of an ancient Chinese tiger using this method.
That's really cool. It almost reminds me of, 3D printers. They used to be these exotic $1 million machines.
Right. And now you can buy a decent one for your desk for a few $100.
So maybe it's not completely crazy to imagine a future where we have affordable personal DNA data storage.
It's not unreasonable at all. Imagine a small desktop device that could archive your entire digital life, photos, videos, documents, into a tiny vial that could literally last for hundreds of generations. You could pass down your digital legacy.
That's a pretty amazing thought. Although, taking it further, could we store data in ourselves?
Hey.
Like integrate digital data into our own body's DNA. That sounds very sci-fi.
That's definitely heading further out there into more speculative, maybe slightly dystopian territory.
Dystopian how?
Well, if your personal data, your bank details, your private messages were encoded biologically within you, think about the security implications. Someone could potentially steal your data just by getting a sample of your hair or saliva.
Yikes. Okay, didn't think of that. Data theft via DNA sample. That's a whole new level of cybersecurity needed.
It certainly raises profound ethical and practical questions if we ever went down that path.
Wow. Okay. So, summing up, DNA as data storage. The potential is just incredible, right? Density, longevity. It blows current tech out of the water, in theory.
Absolutely. The sheer information density and the potential stability over millennia are unmatched.
The reality check is the cost, which is currently astronomical, and the speed of writing the data, which is still relatively slow compared to digital methods.
Those are the main hurdles today, yes, cost and speed, but both are improving rapidly.
So it's a technology with immense promise, maybe for long-term archiving initially, but facing significant engineering and economic challenges before it becomes mainstream.
Precisely. But it really forces you to think differently about what storage even means and how we'll manage this ever-growing flood of information in the future.
It definitely does. And it leaves you wondering, if we do eventually crack the code for cheap, fast DNA storage, maybe even biological integration, what does that future look like? What are the unforeseen consequences, good and bad, of encoding our digital lives into the very molecule of life itself?
That's the provocative thought, isn't it? What new challenges and opportunities arise when the digital and the biological truly start to merge? Something to ponder.